Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 393 of the Running Rogue podcast. This is your host, Chris McClung, coming to you from Austin, Texas, with co-host James Dodds. We're excited to be talking about a buzzword today that is one of my favorites in the context of training, polarization. Last week, we talked about periodization. Today, we're talking about polarization. So we've got our ization words going here in consecutive weeks. To me, if there was a chapter that I could highlight in the book where if somebody said, hey, if there's only one chapter to read, what chapter should I read? I would say this is it. The chapter on, is your training polarized enough? Because we talk often about making sure you're slowing down. Obviously, that's an important part of the equation. But why do we slow down? It's so that we can, when we are going faster, put actually more into it. So it gives us that ability to operate within a broad range and therefore get the most out of both ends of the spectrum. So that's a little teaser. We're going to go through over the next 2 episodes. This is going to be a 2-parter, 9 different questions that we ask in the book about, is your training polarized enough? We'll get through at least 4 of those today. Before we get there, though, I have a question for you. A little opening topic. Last week, we started with a little cynicism. This week, we're going to start with a little positivity. How about that? Question for you is, why do you coach? Why do you coach?
Why do I coach?
Yeah.
Personally?
Yeah.
It's interesting. I've talked on this subject, so I don't want it to sound like an elevator pitch, but I can quickly get to it. And it comes down to the core idea of agency, which is the backbone of modern psychology. If you were to ask, mental health is talked about so much in our culture, but I think there's a lot of misconceptions that float around with it. It's often this idea that if I could just get my head right, then everything else falls into place. And that, I would say, is the most common misconception there, because it's in solving a problem or facing a fear or overcoming an obstacle that our brain gets right. So in so doing hard things, and now I'm going to get misquoted. Like this is going to become slapstick, but like I've done my own deep investigation into trying to solve the world's problems, only to realize that I had a lot of my own problems to solve. And through all of that, negative experiences, positive experiences, I came to see my running very differently. And I saw that, I think, at the core of all things, people want to know when it comes down to the marathon, am I up for the, quote, damn challenge? And so to be a part of that process is quite literally like, it gives my life purpose. So I find coaching to be the most, I got to say this to a classroom at the University of Texas. I was like, it's the most selflessly selfish endeavor I can embark on. Like, talk about mutual benefit. It's like, I can't find anything else that I find more purpose in. And it's when I truly help someone, either it's just across the line. Like, I really don't care the difference between coaching a beginner just to get going or someone who, I've coached some people that are lights out fast, that run numbers I can't even like daydream of. Like their marathon pace is faster than my stride pace. And I just don't care about that. Because once I got in taste with first experiencing it myself, damn, got across the line and I didn't think I could. And now I believe I could. And I wonder if I could do it better. I'm like, to observe that happen in me. And then it took like 10 years later. I'm not saying I knew all this and then started coaching, but like 10 years later to start to have words like this that I could put to it. That was 10 years of me figuring out, what the heck am I up to? Why do I like coaching? So that answer I discovered through the act of coaching is all I wanted to admit there.
So if I were to summarize for you, correct me if I capture this incorrectly, but you're doing it because it means more than the running.
Absolutely. And I don't think that we can discover our ultimate purpose in life alone. Like it's through the experience of others in some form or fashion.
Yeah.
I just don't think that you can answer the question, what does it mean to live a fulfilling and meaningful life that when you die, you're proud? It's like other people, whether it's one other person or multitudes of people. I won't put numbers on that. I'm not here to quantify things or even qualify things for other people. But I'm convinced that the answer in how do I live a meaningful life, it involves other people. the answer has to involve other people, or else I think that we will ultimately be disappointed.
Helping people navigate this sometimes seemingly trivial life and trivial pursuit.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good answer. I mean, I think in the ultimate thing about this for both of us is that it's about the running, but it's also about so much more than the running.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we like to nerd out on the why and the how and the X's and O's of the sport. You know, we wrote a whole book on it because we can get deep and nerdy and go to the nth degree on any topic in the book or in any run coaching topic. But neither of us are sitting here talking about that because we're inherently in love with being a nerd about the sport. We do like being a nerd about the sport, but the reason we're here talking to you into a camera, into a microphone, is because we believe that these principles are a pathway to help people get to a bigger place.
Mm-hmm.
This morning I was having a conversation with an athlete that I coach here in Austin, and I'm going to paraphrase his words, but he came to me and said these without being prompted. He said, basically, I figured out through running that I don't dream big enough. And so he's like, this sport has showed me that I can't dream big enough, that I actually need to dream much bigger. And if I do that, then usually I can get it. And so it's unlocked for him this thing in running, but also outside of running, that is about proving to himself that he can do a lot more than he thought.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just one example, one story of the ripple effect of the sport on people that we coach. But that's why we're here. That's why we do it. That's why we nerd out on this stuff, is because it's an entry point. It's a gateway. It's a key to unlock your ability to do things you never dreamed of.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do that once, it unlocks new things in you that has a ripple effect outside of the sport. You do it twice, you do it 3 times, you keep pressing the envelope, and suddenly you find yourself not even perhaps recognizing yourself because of what you've been able to unlock through the sport. And our belief is that in order to do that most effectively, you follow the right principles to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why we're here talking in front of a mic, in front of a book that we both
helped
write, in order to seemingly discuss what would be trivial things, right, to most people outside looking in. But for us, we know is far from trivial.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that keeps us going is the ripple effect it has on people in their lives.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to pause on that for a minute.
I'm glad, and I want to flip the question to you, but I also want to add some language here. This is where I lose everyone. But I'm a big Matrix fan.
You've been warned.
Yeah, I've been
Matrix, as in Keanu Reeves, the Matrix.
Yeah, okay. Come on, Keanu, love that back. Dude too. But I watched that in high school, and my brain, I guess that was me observing that I was drawn to these macro level considerations about life and existence and what we do in our short little time. And the woman who wrote it, it's like, she's a genius. I've heard her talk a couple of times, and it's like, so I think about that, like, rules in the movie itself have to be coming from some kind of like artistic or philosophical like disposition that the writer has and is trying to either get something out or convey something that they already know quite well, but in artistic format. And so in the movie, we know that like there's something bigger going on, and that the Matrix is an illusion. So it makes me think about just like certain things that we do, like personas or fronts that we can put on, and we go through these illusions and sort of like we'll say like we feel fake, or, someone like Sam Harris has a podcast talking about waking up. There's these asleep in life versus awake in life kinds of analogies that I think most people can connect to. But what's interesting about the Matrix in the movie, and I had to chew on this, I don't know why it like grabbed my attention, but if you die in the Matrix, you die in real life. And so that's my way of looking at like why the study of science and how to condition yourself in such a way that you see tangible improvement on the race day itself. Like that's where it finds its significance, because it is consequential. Like if you die in the Matrix, you quote, die. And so what I take from that is like, if your philosophy in life cannot be embodied, like it cannot be put to practical good use, then I think that your philosophy maybe is no good. At least that's the standard that I hold myself accountable to. And so that's the way by which I ensure when I consider macro level meaning of life, purpose of life kinds of questions, I don't float off into the abyss and just become this like pointless existence of nonsense who's chasing the wind, because there's the counter always, right? And so I look at it as like, yes, the meaning is over here, the real life, but is the matrix important? Sure, absolutely. And let me get out of the metaphor, and it's just like, is the way by which we go about training, or is my duty to an athlete to make sure that I've studied the science to the degree that when they have questions, they can get it like readily available and quickly and see that improvement that causes trust in them towards other people. They go and employ it and they realize like, not only can I trust someone else, but when I also put myself, I hold myself to a standard or subject myself to certain disciplines, I get results. So their own agency is growing, their own discipline is growing. They're learning the rules of how to navigate, quote, the matrix or real life or running and racing itself. And of course, trust in other people. It's like, to me, I can explain it through something like a movie. I don't want to call it silly now because obviously there's meaning in the artist behind it. She's such a brilliant person. Anyway, I'll back off now. What are your reflections on all that?
Well,
does it sound weird?
It's meta for sure, right? And some will love it and some maybe will get lost in it. But I think the essence of what you're saying is that how we go about doing things matters. Because either we can sleepwalk through life and think, well, if I just do this the generally accepted way, then it's enough. Versus saying, no, I actually want to develop mastery about something. I want to dig into it. I want to be enlightened. I want to find the way, to use a little bit of a matrix term, so that I can then unlock things in me that I might not have expected, or that will allow me to go deeper. Right. So it's a little bit of, to segue, it's a little bit of the red pill versus the blue pill question. Do you want to stay asleep and not be open to the fact that this is all a simulation and you're just plugged into a machine somewhere? Or do you want to be enlightened to that and therefore then have to take on the responsibility of what it means? In the case of Neo's question or Neo's decision in the movie, right? And he chose to take on what it, the challenge of what it meant I don't remember which color pill it was, but he chose the pill that was the enlightened one, that opened his eyes to the fact that there was more. And so, segueing it back here, I think this is a question to the listener: red pill or blue pill? Do you want to be enlightened and therefore be taken to places that you never thought possible? Or do you want to continue just to go about your way, doing it the generally accepted way? And we're giving you the path to enlightenment here.
Don't settle for the woman in the red dress. Follow the rabbit all the way down.
That's right. And a big part of that is your training polarized enough? Are you willing to actually take what I would consider the risk of betting on that? Because most people want to run down the middle and be basically doing everything in moderation, or maybe pushing more on the hard side of things than really polarizing on the easy side of things. And so what happens there? You see improvement, yes, but are you really, really going to get to the edge and limits of your potential? I would say not. So let's go down the rabbit hole today.
Let's do
polarization with that as a completely unscripted intro.
Yeah. Thanks for entertaining
For better or worse. I love it. All right, so we're going to talk about, is your training polarized enough? Again, kind of the crux to me of the book. If I were personally to pick one chapter that you really need to understand, we've got 9 questions in the chapter that really help test your own ability to polarize enough. And so before we get into we'll get through 4 questions today, and we'll get through 5 more in the second part of this discussion. We've got to set the table, kind of the what and the why of polarization. What does it mean? What are the thoughts that bubble to your head when that word comes to mind?
Well, polar, I think of as like extreme ends, like North Pole, South Pole, right? So I think of very wide ranges. And so I know we'll get into this, but like I can't think of a shorter, faster. Well, there are faster, but anyway, strides being like representing kind of like this almost all out kind of fast end of the range, and obviously, are your easy days easy enough? This like very easy pace all the way back to where it's confusing between, is this a fast walk or a slow jog? Like, so is it polar enough? Is it broad enough? Is it wide enough? Is it varied enough? And while we're saying it should be polarized, another way to come at this would be to hook into what a lot of listeners might think. I'd say at least 50% of runners might have at least said this once in their life. And that's, man, I just have one pace. It's either running or I'm not. And I just have never bought that. I actually knew because of my own laziness that wasn't true. I was like, the first time I went out for a run and I got huffy and puffy, I was like, why don't I slow down and try that? Like I was just sort of like, there is no such thing as only one. But because it does get sticky in people's mind, I'm glad we address it. And that science even has a specific term for it, and that's polarization. Like, is it wide enough and varied enough?
And as we've said before, does every day, every moment, every mile have its purpose, and are you executing on that purpose? Because if we want to be our fastest selves in any distance from mile to marathon, then we have to have on one end the aerobic capacity, the aerobic foundation to be able to turn oxygen into ATP and make your muscles grow or go. And then on the other end of the spectrum, do we have the ability from a neuromuscular perspective to fire those muscles and move them fast enough to get the most speed out of them? And on one end, if you're a marathoner even, you need that. You need to be able to turn the legs over and move them quickly enough to go fast. And as we've said before, the faster you can run the short stuff, the faster you can run the long stuff. So it's all linked. But then on the other end of the spectrum, you got to have the staying power to be able to sustain faster speeds for longer and longer periods of time. And both things work together. And when we're working the ends of the spectrum, we're optimizing those ends of the functional spectrum as well, so that we can bring them both together in a way that's optimal versus constantly sub-optimizing everything. And so the reason this is important is because it allows you to develop the full range of skill sets that you need in order to be your best, and also develop that full range of skill sets in an optimal way so that you're getting the most from each end of the spectrum. Now, there is stuff in the middle. Obviously, we'll cover that too. But one of the things that's important to comment on as we intro is you don't want to get stuck in the gray area because there's a lot of gray. There's spaces in the effort zones and the pace ranges that are in some ways physiological development no man's lands. We often talk about marathon pace itself being one of those, where if you're running typically at marathon pace in a workout, you're not developing really anything physiologically. You might be developing aptitude to run at that exact pace, which is an important part of a subset of marathon training, but you're also not really doing much else. And so there are spaces in this range of things we need to work on that are kind of useless. I mean, an easy pace that's a little too fast is a gray zone that you don't want to be in, for example. And we'll talk about this more as we get to the questions. But if you're going a little too fast on an easy run, then you're in gray zone, a danger zone, because you might be going too fast to fully get the aerobic capacity building benefits of easy running, while also going too fast which then stresses the musculoskeletal system in a way that might injure you and therefore prevent you from being consistent, while at the same time not getting the benefits of going faster. So then you're in this place that's kind of a waste of time, and potentially a waste of time at best, and at worst, destructive. So we want to stay out of the gray.
And I would say that these aren't hard numbers. Earlier, I guessed at 50% say they have wind gear, but well, I guess it would be similar. So I have to stick with that. But it's like I have had athletes that, they always hover around like the same pace. It's like if their fast run is 9:30, their slow run's 9:50, and almost all their runs are 9:40. Like I do see that.
Right.
Like when I scan Strava and I'm checking in on people, it's like some people still, it's just hard for them to break away from that.
And I understand it. You know, we've talked a lot about the reasons why that's a mental block for people and why it seems natural that if you run faster, you can get faster. But we're telling you to take the enlightened path instead.
Yeah.
Because there is max potential on the enlightened path. There's surprising yourself on the enlightened path, but it does require setting the ego aside, being willing to operate on the ends of the spectrum, learning to operate on the ends of the spectrum. I think part of this is also just being not only the willingness to go there, but also just the stubbornness to when easy running at a certain pace feels uncomfortable or awkward because you're not used to it. Instead of getting out of it because that feels better, stay there until it feels more comfortable, because it will. You will develop an aptitude to run on the full spectrum. And I think the best runners are the ones that can do that. They can run a 15-minute mile as easy as they can run their marathon race pace, for example. So is your training polarized enough? That is the ultimate question. But to get there, we're going to ask you 9 questions, getting through the first 4 today to help you give yourself a little test, a little quiz to see if you're doing it the right way. So I would encourage you to get out, maybe some notes and answer these questions as we go through them for yourself so that you can create a little bit of a roadmap for improvement as we come out of this couple of episodes. So the first one is, are you doing enough at easy efforts? Are you doing enough mileage at easy efforts? So break that one down for us.
Well, on that one, I'll just go to what we put in the book, and that's the 80-20, but I also want to add like a little asterisk if I can. And before I even go there, is that the direction you were thinking?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we do have the 80-20 rule. And what I'll add there is that like when I first started hearing it get popularized within running, I was like, 2 thoughts came to mind. One is that when I first started learning coaching, and I was reading much older books, so this stuff you could argue is somewhat outdated, but I use it in a progressive manner now. But it's the old school rule was 90-10. It was 1 out of every 10 miles should be run hard or fast. 90% should be run easy. And then I think it was Fitzgerald who helped, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he helped popularize 80-20 within running. And I want to remind folks that the 80-20 rule is Pareto's principle. And I used to say Pareto, so I actually don't know, but he was a guy who observed that like 20% of his vines would produce 80% of his crop, like the berries. And it's just turned out that gets applied everywhere. Like I learned that in business long before I ever learned it as a coach and in running, but it was like 20% of your clients will produce 80% of your revenue. And I think if most people went and reviewed their business, they would find that it's probably close. They'd be like, oh, that's true. Like this 25% is what's producing this. It's also how we get our Navy SEALs. It is a filtering process. It's how we get our NFL players. You take the 80% discard, you get the 20 that go on to college. You take the 80% out of college, the 20 they advance to the NFL. You do another 80-20 application, you'll find who the real playmakers are. You do another 80-20, you'll find your Tom Brady, like the one, right? And I think we do that. That's how we find our Navy SEAls, et cetera. Anyway, so this is sort of like a law of life, and it should not be surprising that it also applies to the science of running, right? And that's not me trying to twist things. It's sort of like, of course, things drift that way. It's written all over life. And so to bring that all back, I'm sorry if it seems like I'm going on tangents today, is that I think that the marker we're often inching towards is that 20% of our miles that we run in a given week in a training paradigm or a program should be quality. The other 80% easy. But also, depending on who I'm working with and where they're at in their maturation journey, I might look at it as I'm going to start someone with 90% of their running as easy, 10% being hard. And through the program itself, they might inch up to like 18% of their miles ended up being quality. But then also as an advancement over the years, so in their 5th year, they might be hitting 20% at quality, 80% easy earlier in a season. But I'm always thinking of the spectrum of 10 to 20 of the quality. So I got long-winded.
Yeah, no, it's good. I think it's important to point that out. 80/20 Running, a book by Matt Fitzgerald that dovetails nicely with the principles in our book, would be one that we would recommend. But he talks about, in general, this idea that of your total mileage, about 20, no more than 20% should be faster, 80% easy. And I think you make a good point, which is that for most people, it's probably even less than that, as little as 10% up to 20%, but somewhere in that range, probably for most people, is where it lives. And if you're not sure, starting with 10% is probably the best place to go, and then you can gradually improve that over time. But the overarching principle here is that the vast majority of your running should be at easy efforts. This is where, for example, for us, we get typically one quality day a week for most people. 1 out of 6 days or 1 out of 5 days is done at faster paces where you're incorporating a workout in some form. And every other day is easy in different varieties. And we'll talk a little bit about that variation as we go. But a lot of programs will have 2 quality days a week as standard, especially for a more advanced runner. And we're here to say that the vast majority of people only need 1. And in fact, instead of taking that extra day and turning it into a quality, we believe you're going to get more bang for your buck by turning that into a medium long run instead, because that volume on the medium long run will give you aerobic capacity building benefits that are going to outweigh anything you could gain from a speed workout. So make sure you're spending the vast majority of your miles at easy efforts. One way to check this, by the way, and it's not perfect because we all know our watches are a little bit off, but most of the GPS watches now, you can see it on the Coros app. I believe Garmin has the same. Will actually give you a breakdown of how much time you're spending in each heart rate zone. And again, it's not perfect, but it's an estimate that is probably not a bad thing to look at for most people. And I remember, I like to look at it periodically and see, how much am I spending in zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, zone 4, zone 5. And it'll break it down and give you percentages. And then through that, you can kind of get a sense for this approximation of whether or not you're in these ranges. If you're spending too much time, more than 80% more than 20% in zones 3, 4, 5, then that's a red flag. You want that number to be less than 20%, and probably for many people, less than 15 or 10. So that's one way to look at it. But the other way to look at it is just kind of add up your miles through the week and which ones of those are easy versus how much time you're spending at faster paces or prescribed paces. And that'll give you another way to look at it. But question number 1 is, what's that percentage, and are enough of your miles easy as a percentage of the total?
And even days kind of help make that easy. Like we have 1 quality a day, and if you're running 5 days a week, that's 20% of your week. You can splice it in so many ways. And polarization fits like easy day, easy, hard day, hard. Like you can start to see this pattern in every dimension. Like we do a hard quality interval with a long rest recovery. Like there's always a little bit of that, but
yeah, and there's a lot of reasons why we do this, just to remind people, because we've covered this on other episodes, but we do it so that we can run more. Because if you're doing the vast majority of your mileage at easy efforts, then that unlocks the ability to increase that overall volume and increase the consistency towards increased volume. I think we had a question a few weeks ago on the Q&A, the Friday Q&A, 2 p.m. Central, for those that want to jump on our Instagram with us on Fridays, about someone who was talking about struggling getting over 35 miles per week, just having that be a barrier at which he would face injury. And one of the first things we asked him to ask himself was, hey, am I going easy enough on those 35 miles with this type of ratio? Because most likely he probably wasn't, which is then limiting his ability to expand the overall volume. So we do it for that reason, so we can run more. We do it because when we're running easy, we're actually building the most important thing that we need, which is our aerobic capacity, our aerobic foundation. the thing that allows us from the inside out to take more oxygen from the air and carry it to our working muscles to operate respiration. And most of that physiological internal change that we talk about in terms of expanded lung capacity, more red blood cells, more capillaries, more mitochondria in our cells, most of that aerobic stuff happens when we're running easy, because that's where the body can remodel itself. So that's why we spend more time there. I use the engine analogy often, which is that when you're running easy, you're building the size of your engine, you're adding cylinders to the engine. When you're running fast, you're fine-tuning the engine you have.
Mm-hmm.
So do you want a V8 or do you want a revved up lawnmower engine? That becomes the ultimate question. And when you want a V8, because the V8 is going to kick a lawnmower engine's ass every day of the week. And therefore, you need to spend more time on the easy stuff, because that's where we're building engine size. We're fine-tuning the engine. We're adding nitrous. We're revving the RPMs when we do the fast stuff. So this is why we talk about this 80-20 or 90-10 ratio. So quick reminders there, but I think that gets us to the second question, which is that, are we varying our distance enough? Kind of goes back to the episode probably 4 or 5 ago now, where we were talking about every day having a purpose. And are you executing the purpose of each day when you go out? And part of that is pace, obviously, but part of that is also distance. Are you enabling your ability to polarize the distance? Because one of the magical things about longer running is that you get non-linear or exponential benefit the later miles of longer runs than you do the earlier miles. So if you're always doing 5-mile runs, you're not going to get the same benefit as if you did a 10-mile run and three 3-mile runs, for example. Kind of looking at 21 miles as a 2 ways to do an equivalent distance, right? So we want to make sure we're polarizing our distance as well, having a long run, having a medium long run, having recovery runs that are shorter, because that enables not only optimal development, but also, again, the ability to sustain the volume.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you add there?
Just that I hope, I think that's great. So I don't have a ton to add on that point. It's more of a hopeful spirit in me that's waking up. I'm like, I hope athletes can translate in that and see. That's why we have like one day is like a medium long. If let's say you're a 6-day-a-week runner, just to make it simple, and I'll run the Monday, Wednesday, Saturday schedule because that's what my local group does. It's sort of like, I hope you start to see that's why, okay, Monday, this medium long run, we're kind of stretching you and we're putting strides on that. So what do we follow it up with? Crazy easy day, recovery run the next day. And then bam, on Wednesday, we're stressing you again, but we're hitting you with quality. And it's slightly different than the medium long run, right? It's a different stimulus. And then what do we ideally follow that up with? Recovery, super easy, motion is lotion, right? And then take your Friday off. Saturday, get your long run, deplete, glycogen, everything, like expose the muscle tissue to that fatigue. Like you were saying, it's getting a different stimulus than when you're running 400s on your quality day on Wednesday. So we're exposing you to stress in that manner again. And then back to the polarity piece. What's ideal? Sunday, crazy easy jog recovery. It's like, I hope they're seeing that translate into why we do what we do in the practical.
Yeah. And to put it bluntly for people, I think most people aren't polarizing their distance enough. If you think about, the average quote runner out there who's just going to get stuff done, 3 to 5 days a week, and they're probably out there doing a route that's similar from their house. Maybe it's 3, 4, 5 miles, and they're doing it 4 or 5 times a week, and they're thinking, great, I'm doing great.
Mm-hmm.
And while that's better than nothing, again, if you were to stratify that a little bit more and have a proper long run every week, you're going to get more bang for your buck in general, not just with fitness development, but also with longevity. I think the longevity science also tells us that long, easy days actually have a bigger impact on our potential to live longer as well. So there's not just the getting faster benefits, but there's also the living longer benefits. But I would say that most people are doing too similar distance from day to day, and they need to make sure that in particular, they have a long run each week. Ideally also have a medium long run, but we'll start with the long run. And that long run should be at least 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
You should get to a point where every week you can go out and do 2 hours on a Saturday or Sunday and feel good about it and not have it disrupt your week.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're doing that, and obviously it stratifies even more if you're doing marathon training or something like that. If you're doing that, then you're not only really truly tapping into the aerobic capacity building benefits of a long run, but you're tapping into the longevity benefits of having that long, easy movement as well. I remember there was this conversation I had with my wife a long, long time ago in our early 20s when we were both early in our running journey. And she and I don't remember what I was training for, but I think I was not training for something, and I was still going out and doing 12, 14-mile runs on weekends. And she asked me the question, she's like, are you going to be doing long runs every weekend? Even when you're not training for something? And I remember pausing and thinking, yeah, I think I am.
This is what you married, babe.
This is what we're doing. This is what we're doing. And to her credit, she embraced that fully.
Love that.
And, to the point where when we had kids, we would get babysitters not to go out on Saturday night, but to go out on Saturday morning so that we could go get our long runs in. So, but yeah, it becomes, not 52 weeks a year, but 50 weeks a year, 48 weeks a year, where you should be having a run that is longer than the rest of your runs.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously when you're in full training, you should be having an appropriate medium long run, because if we're stratifying the distance, we're getting adverse benefit, because not a 5-mile run is not linearly related. The benefits of a 5-mile run are not linearly related to the benefits of a 10-mile run or a 15-mile run. 10-mile runs and 15-mile runs have an exponentially greater benefit, because those later miles in the run are really where the magic starts to happen from an aerobic development standpoint. And so that's why this is important. It also, I think, a side benefit is gets you to that point where you can kind of do anything at any time and it not be a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I love the idea that we're all training for life. And if you go on vacation and you want to go do a 10-mile hike to go see something cool, climb a volcano, a mountain, whatever it is, and if you have this kind of long run foundation that's basically 52 weeks a year, you can go do that stuff and not have it affect you at all.
Yeah.
Like, oh, yeah, okay, I'll go do that. That's cool.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
So I think there's a lot of benefits beyond just the training benefits.
I said an enthusiastic yes there because you're tapping on my that's what's driving me right now with my running. I don't have a time goal ahead of me, but I'm like, I want a lifestyle pattern that is that makes me proud of me. Yeah. Honestly, I'll just say it. And for that reason, what you just said, when you get that phone call or you're on a vacation and someone's like, I want to go check this out, you're like, I can actually say yes to that. That's a good feeling.
Yep. So question 1, is your ratio of easy to hard right? Question 2 is your distance varied enough? Meaning, do you have a long run programmed into your plan that becomes something you do more or less week in and week out? Do you have, after that, a medium long run programmed into your plan? If not, your training's not polarized enough.
Mm-hmm.
You got to start extending at least one, but ultimately, hopefully 2 of those runs a week to really get the benefits of the distance. So that's question 2. Question 3, which we've hounded on a lot, but we can never hound on enough. Is your slow enough? Is your slow enough? Or is your easy enough? To put it a different way for those that get hung up on the word slow. Because there is no slow, only degrees of fast. But when we use the word slow, we're talking about relative to you.
Mm-hmm.
So is your slow enough? I mean, this might be the most important question in our 9 questions. But are you running your easy runs easy enough in order to not only get the benefit of them appropriately, but also so that you can then add miles to the system? Because that's where the real magic comes. Or not. Most people are not.
Mm-hmm. I would say, I know we asked the question in the book, is your slow enough? Are you running those easy days easy enough or slow enough? And what's interesting is I feel like as the runner, the question we get so much, or as coaches, we get this from the runner so much is, how do I know I'm not running my easy days too slow? And it's interesting. I was thinking about that on my run today. And I took it real easy, I guess, because I was thinking on this question. It just stuck with me. So I was like, I'll meditate on it. And I do not have one example in, I don't know how many years now. It's like 15 or 16 years of coaching now. It's like, I don't have one example where people running too slowly on easy days cost them. Like I don't have one anecdote. And yet I have so many that fit the opposite, where it's like, dang, if I could have just gotten them to, like, their qualities weren't bad. I have so many examples of people that have hit quality workouts. Like they were still able to get it done in the season, and therefore it provided a lot of hope to them. But then they're like, every other day is like MGP plus like 15 seconds. They're like, well, it's slower than race pace. And it's just like, dang, it's that disposition of like, how close can I get to the fire, as opposed to, well, if that really does benefit me, what if I even slow down even more? The ones that take that, I just don't have an anecdote of where that cost them.
It doesn't exist really. I don't think it's a problem that people need to even worry about. I understand the question, but I think, normally when people ask that question, my answer is technically yes, practically no.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I have enough, what's the right word? I have enough conviction on this now that I can just say no.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can't go slow.
Yeah.
You can't go too slow. Because going too slow, I mean, even a brisk walk is an aerobic development activity.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can get aerobic development on a brisk walk, then you can get it on a super easy run.
Mm-hmm.
And technically, if you were to do a casual walk, like a walk in the park with your dog, where you're letting them meander around and, sniff on the bushes and whatever else, then maybe we get to a place where you're going too slow.
Mm-hmm.
But that's kind of where you have to be. So if you're actually running or even brisk walking, you're going fast enough to get the aerobic development while also unlocking your ability to do more.
Mm-hmm.
And so why not both? And as you said, people are always asking, well, how close to the fire can I get? And we want you instead to say, how far away from the fire can I get?
Mm-hmm.
And make it comfortable. On those recovery runs, super easy. On those easy runs, even easier. I challenged my group, one of my groups this week, to, on their down week long run, to just go as slow as possible and see what happens. I need to check Strava to see if they listen to me on that. But
he's coming.
I would want to challenge everybody to do that all the time. Just how easy can you run your long run, and then just see what happens. Because the magic of an easy long run is not only that you're getting the benefits of what you need by doing so, but you also finish feeling amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And you might go 10, 12, 14, 15, 16 miles at such an easy pace that suddenly you finish, you're like, wow, I feel better than when I started. And the rest of the day feels great.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's a happy place to be, because that means you can recover and do more the next day and ultimately get to a higher overall weekly mileage, which then if you stack those from week to week has a massive benefit. There was a study that came out recently that basically correlated marathon performance to volume and just said, look, you need to be doing, I think the threshold that they were putting out there was 65K per week, which is, what does that work out to? That's
like 38 or 40 miles.
Something like that. So basically, if you're not doing that, you're not doing enough to perform at your best for a marathon. And then obviously we know as it goes beyond that, then you're only going to get faster. So slow down so that you can unlock even more volume.
Mm-hmm. And I know we have a ton of anecdotes because we talked about this about Laura Fenton that weekend after 3M.
Right.
Also you. as a story, but it's cool. I can make this timely because your friend Des just won Princess this
Disney
weekend.
Princess, yes.
And I had
Congrats.
I know that because I had an athlete out there and she was racing, and I was debriefing with her yesterday. She was my last call of the day. Tuesdays are just stacked with 1-to-1 calls. And it was really special to reflect on that with her, because she's come through a long journey, cancer survivor, everything. But B, we were specifically touching on this point. I was like, this is so freaking cool. She averaged 8:30s on race day, and I went back to her peak week and reviewed it. And her fastest run that week, and it was like a 52-mile week. So a 52 miles, her fastest beyond the quality day was 10:18, and most of them were above 11. And she threw down 8:30s. Like that just fits this example of sort of like most people like would probably take 90 seconds slower than half marathon and 1 minute beyond marathon. And those are good numbers. We've put them out there. You've put them out there. It's helpful.
Right.
But the spirit of what you're bringing is that's the fast end, the fastest you should go. And someone who literally just this past weekend, I'm like, she got to see the proof in the pudding. And I think that's great.
I mean, it's magic. And it isn't until you really embrace that that you get to see the fruits of that emphasis, but it'll happen. It'll happen. One question that people ask, or things they say when we bring up how, can you go slow, or they'll say, well, I can't run that slow. It's too hard to go that slow. And usually I have a kind of two answers there. One is just the practical, well, yes, you can. Have you tried? And sort of forcing people, because it is uncomfortable when you're not used to that rhythm going, a lot slower than normal. It's uncomfortable. It's awkward. The body isn't used to it. So it's going to be weird and awkward. But if you can run in place and not make that awkward, then you can run a 15-minute mile, a 14-minute mile, a 13-minute mile, a 12-minute mile by simply then adding a forward lean and then moving forward in space. So yes, it may be awkward and uncomfortable. That doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. It means you should do it more so that then it becomes comfortable. And my belief is that if you can unlock efficiency at a slower pace, then that actually unlocks unknown efficiency at faster paces as well. So I think there's not just a aerobic development benefit. There's also a neuromuscular benefit to mastering the ability to run any pace.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I always tell people is a more personal one, and say, well, if I'm a 6:20-ish marathoner when I was peaking, and I would run my easy runs, recovery-oriented runs, 3 to 4 minutes per mile slower than that, which was what was helping me unlock the ability to run those paces when it mattered. If I was doing that, and most of the time I'm coaching people that have marathon PRs that are slower than 2:45, and they're running faster than me on their easy runs or than on their recovery runs, then we have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So, I not just talk the talk, I walk the walk.
I've used your Strava with people. So, I was like, look.
Go look. Because, and you mentioned it with Austin International Half. I was doing a lot of 10-minute mile runs before I threw down, a 6:40 pace for 13.1 at Austin International Half. So the proof is also in the pudding.
Mm-hmm.
Talk the talk, walk the walk. And if you're running faster than me on your easy days or recovery days, and you haven't run a 2:45 yet, we got a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So embrace it, practice it, go out, set goals around it. I like to tell people, set targets for it. If you have a 4-mile easy recovery run and you want to run 10-minute miles or 11-minute miles, set a goal to run it in 40 minutes or 44 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Force yourself to do it. And yes, it'll be uncomfortable and awkward for a handful of runs. But if you do it for 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, you're going to get comfortable. It's going to start feeling smooth. And then just marvel at how easy that goes and how amazing you feel afterwards. Because then what you'll see also is that your quality runs become even better. Your speed workouts become even better because you can put more into them when you're embracing the easy on the other days. So I think we've beat a dead horse, but Yeah. Is your slow enough? If it's not, you're leaving time on the table.
And I know we beat a dead horse, but I just wanted to tack on that.
We're going to keep beating it.
As a reminder is like, one, we are talking about optimization right now, as in like we said some like pretty lighthearted and fun and sort of extra benefit type things like longevity. But this is also like at the heart of this is, quote, how you get your best on race day too. And the other piece is like, remember when you go slower, you're out there longer. And I know there's a constant fight for time for people, but when you look at like development, regardless of the temperature of the oven, if the cake's not in it, it doesn't matter, right? And so like when you're going slower, like if a 10 miler used to take you 90 minutes, but you slowed it down to 10s instead of 9s, and now it takes you an hour 40, that's 10 more minutes in the oven at the proper temp, right? And so it's like, that's just like, almost we use mileage as such a piece of the conversation, but duration is really the subcomponent. Like it's the duration, like the amount of time that you spent that week running is probably a more valuable marker. But I don't want to switch how we talk and everything. But
yeah, it's a good point. Time on your feet. It's the classic. Is a 90-minute run at 9-minute pace better than a 90-minute run at 10-minute pace? You know, one of them's more mileage, 10 miles versus 9, which is better? And the answer lies in, it depends on the runner.
Yep.
But for most people, the 90 minutes at 10 minutes is going to be better. Or the 10 miles at 110 minutes is going to be better. Or the 10 miles at 100 minutes is going to be better than the 10 miles at 90 minutes, right? Because you're actually in the right aerobic development zone to do it, to get the right benefits. Plus, you're going longer. More time on feet actually means more benefit. So hopefully you followed us there. But now we segue. That was question 3. Is your slow enough? Question 4, the segue is your fast enough, essentially. And that's, put a different way, are you doing strides? Are you doing that once a week session where you're touching on the faster end in a way that's safe and smooth and comfortable and done repeatedly? We talk about strides. They're basically just a rehash, short controlled sprints that you do once a week in doses of 4 to 6 at a time. The way we like people to run strides is to think about, or to find a 80 to 100 meter stretch of road or track in your mind, divide that into thirds, build your speed for a third, hold your speed for the middle third, let off the gas and cruise to a stop over the final third. And in that middle third, you're hitting 95% of peak speed. So not all out, but you're getting close to it, but you're only holding it for about 30 meters in the middle. And then you do a full walk back recovery and repeat 4 to 6 rounds. Once a week after a run, ideally, is the recipe that we recommend. And we've talked about this in other episodes, but we'll remind people here, what are strides doing for us?
Yeah, we did that in the speed development, but like we're recruiting fast twitch fibers. We're not only getting faster, but we're also ensuring, like, we're answering that question of like, well, if I'm running slow all the time, how do I know I'm not just going to be a slow runner? It's like strides. Like,
that's right.
You know, not to mention the deeper, there's a more complex answer of all the benefits you discussed earlier, but it's like, this is what we're doing. Now we're taking that other set of like muscle tissue and saying, oh, you're not just going to go to sleep on us either. This is use it or lose it. And so that's all it takes. Like, you just go give those strides 4 by 20-second burst or 80 to 100 meters. And we're recruiting those fast twitch fibers, keeping them robust, activated, ready to go. Just like we want to be ready to go on vacation, we want to know our speed's there when we need it, when qualities get inserted. And then that's a continuum that it's like, hey, I want to know I can run the race pace on race day. I got it from the qualities. I was prepared for the qualities from the strides. And we keep the strides through all the way through.
Strides are week in and week out. They have a place every single week of any training cycle, but also even when you're in between training cycles, because they keep those fast twitch muscles activated at all times. And you only need those small doses. The analogy I like to use for strides is that they're like allergy shots for speed. If you're taking allergy shots, you're taking them once a week for many months, often years, so that you can become immune essentially to whatever allergen that's bothering you. And strides are kind of like that. Once a week, small inoculation, small dose. But when you accumulate that over time, once a week done consistently for not just weeks and months, but years, then it has an amazing benefit to, one, make you more efficient as a runner, but two, to also keep that speed active and fresh so that you can use it when you're applying it in the context of quality workouts. And, we would believe that, especially for that beginner runner, if you just did easy volume plus strides, you could actually make great strides, pun intended, because that is all it takes. It just takes small doses of speed to hang on to it. But are you doing it? I think strides are a thing, in my experience as a coach, that people remember to add, and then they get lazy, and it kind of becomes one of those first things that falls away after 4, 5, 6 weeks of getting into a training cycle. Maybe they're doing them at the end of their medium long run, and then they're starting to get to a point where that medium long run extends, and then they have to skip it because they've got to rush to the next thing. And so strides tend to be the first thing that gets cut. And we're here to remind you, don't ever cut strides. If it doesn't fit at the end of your medium long run, fine. Find another day for it. You can do it at the end of one of your other easy recovery days. There's a spot for it somewhere.
I'd be curious to know if you bless this or you consider it a compromise, but I've done it, so I'll already admit to it. And that's it. I don't often get in that debate with runners, but every now and then when it does come up, I just tell them, I'd rather you do, let's say they're medium long runs, 10 miles, and it's sort of like that day's gotten long, and I'm like, I would rather you do them in your 10th mile. Like, just tell yourself, sweet, I got past 9, walk a little, hit a stride, walk a little, jog, hit a stride, walk a little, jog, hit a stride. Once you get your 4, you might notice you have like 0.5 to go. So your Strava won't look pretty. Maybe you were averaging 9-minute miles for 9 miles, and your 10th showed up as like 10:30. And someone might be like, what happened in your 10th mile? If that's guiding your training, well, then no wonder your training's not going so great. No, I'm just kidding. But I would rather, do you bless that? Do you consider it a compromise?
I totally bless that. And it can be done that way or just done as 20-second pickups. The biggest thing to me, if you're going to do it that way, is that, and to me, it totally counts, especially if you need that. You need to do it that way to fit it in, because I'd rather you get 9 miles and then a mile that's incorporating strides than get the 10 without the strides, right? The thing that is the thing you have to watch for in that situation, or the pitfall, I think, that some people fall into, is that their recoveries between the strides become faster when they're kind of incorporating it at the end, where they're just like, oh, I'm just going to easy jog between and then hit another one. It's like, no, just walk. Walk for 100 meters. Stride 100 meter, walk 100 meters. Stride 100 meter, walk 100 meter. And if that's on your way back to your starting point, fine. And then if it messes up your Strava, fine. But just make sure that your recovery is complete between each one, because we want that heart rate back down to basically, we don't want it to become an aerobic activity. It should be, as Alan Cousins says, it should be an alactic activity, meaning that you're really just focused on the neuromuscular stimulus. You're not focused on the aerobic stimulus at all. So you need to make sure that the recovery in between is sufficient. Otherwise, it becomes an aerobic activity, and that takes away from the neuromuscular response. So just make sure, if you do it that way, that you're walking the 100 meters in between, getting that heart rate back to normal, and then go again. So are you doing strides or not? That's question 4. Because if you're not doing strides, then your training's not polarized enough. We're going to wrap it here. We've got 4 questions for you today. So this is part 1 of the test. How have you done, listener? Are enough of your miles at easy efforts? How are you doing on that 90-10 or 80-20 rule? Question 2, are your distances varied enough? Do you have a proper long run? Do you have a proper medium long run? Question 3, is your slow enough? How fast are you running those easy days and recovery days? And can you push that to even slower? And 4, are you doing strides? Are you working that fast into the range each week in a small inoculation that allows you then to do everything else you want to do with your training? Those are 4 critical questions. We'll get to 5 more in part 2 of this episode. So we'll wrap it here with just a few reminders. 1, Friday, 2 p.m. Central, we do a Q&A on our Instagram account at Rogue Running. I'm on there at Rogue Chris. And if you have questions about any of this content or about your training specifically, jump on there and ask. We spend about 30 minutes. We get really good questions. Hopefully people are finding it helpful, but they keep coming back. So it seems like they are. So go check us out there. Check us out on YouTube if you haven't watched the videos yet. We're on the Rogue Running YouTube, where you can also find some other fun stuff. And of course, on all the audio channels that you could want. And then if you want to train with us, go to roguerunning.com. We've got in-person training here in Dallas and Austin, and then virtual training in really any format you could want, either virtual group training or in virtual one-on-one training. All that's at our website, roguerunning.com. So there you go. We'll wrap it here. Go get your easy running done, folks, and we'll talk to you next week.